to Adversity to Ascension, a podcast about taking the adversities in our lives and turning them into meaning. I'm your host, Dr. Sandra Cox, and I'm very happy to welcome Randy Haveson to the show today. Randy is a thought leader in the area of self-esteem. Randy has 40 years of recovery under his belt at this point and has taken that adversity and turned it into a great deal of meaning in his life and for those of others. He has been on CNN, CNBC, Fox News, has done a TED Talk, and has written a best-selling book called Becoming Your Own BFF. Thank you, Randy, for being here. I'm so happy to see you.
Sandy, are you kidding? It is my honor to be here today.
I can't wait for the audience to hear your story because it is one of really triumphing over a really tough time in your life. And you've taken that and you've just turned it into so much meaning for so many people. You've changed so many lives. So tell us about that.
You know, it was never my intention when I started this journey. I was 24 years old. My life was a mess. I got kicked out of college for the second time, fired from my job delivering pizza, thinking my life is over. Everyone's tired of my BS. And I thought, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So I figured out my plan. I was going to sit in the bathtub so that I didn't make a mess for anyone to have to clean up. I was going to use a knife, and I knew you cut down and not across if you were serious. And I thought, well, can you cut one and then cut the other? Maybe I'll just cut open my throat instead. And I looked in the mirror to see where to start. And I made eye contact and went, what are you doing? And all of a sudden it occurred to me, oh my God, you have a drug problem. And it was like the first time that it really occurred to me. And I realized later, this is called denial. And I lived in denial for a long time. And in that moment, I had that moment of clarity and I realized that I didn't want to die. I just needed help. And I did the most courageous thing I've ever done in my life. I reached out for help, called a hotline. And I truly believe the woman who answered the phone that night, she saved my life. And that started my journey of recovery. And I started going to 12-step meetings, found a therapist who specialized in addiction, started turning my life around, feeling better day by day because I didn't have the drugs and the alcohol in my system. And all of a sudden I put 30 days together and then 60 days. And life just kind of took over and things started to work out for me. I got back into college, got my bachelor's degree, got a master's degree, started speaking in high schools, and things just took off. And if you would have told me today, or if you would have told me back then that I would be where I'm at today, I would have thought you were crazy. I mean, there's no way my life can turn out this way. I just wanted to stop getting high. I didn't know that all these other things were wrapped up in it. So I'm very grateful today for what I've learned, the experiences that I've had. And yeah, now that I get to help others, that's the best part of the whole thing.
That's an amazing story. What do you think? Where do you think that revelation came from when you looked in the mirror?
That's a really good question. I think it came from my entire life. I knew I was a sensitive kid. I knew that I had these feelings, but as a boy and a man in our society, I'm not allowed to have these feelings. So I just stuffed everything inside, and alcohol and drugs were a great way for me to mask who I really was on the inside. And in that moment of clarity on May 16th, 1984, that part of me said, hey, we need help. Mm-hmm. And I really do think it was that part of me that had been buried and hidden for so long. It finally just had the courage to speak out and say, we need help.
That's so wonderful that part of you was there to step in and make that realization. I think you're right. Young men, we socialize our boys and our young men to be hyper masculine. And for some reason in our society, that means that you have to stuff your feelings down. You have to be tough. You can't show anyone your true feelings, especially if it looks like you might cry, or you might be caring about somebody and really wanting to help them. Empathy is not
Mm-hmm.
encouraged in our boys and our young men in the society. So, do you think that was part of what was going on for you? I know you personally, and you're a very empathetic person.
Thank you. But that took practice to bring that part of me back out. And yes, men and boys are not allowed to have their feelings. You're crying like a little girl. Those kind of things are ingrained into us. But I think more important than that, the one that men are taught, you don't ask for help. It's that thing, men don't ask for directions. We're not allowed to ask for help. So that was the hardest part, is actually saying, hey, I need help. And that was the one that took the most courage. I think the feelings happened later on when I realized, wow, it is okay for me to know my sadness and get in touch with that, and my hurt and my disappointment and my frustration. I didn't know that at the beginning. I think the first piece for me was the reaching out for help, and the feelings came later.
Right. I've worked in the area of substance abuse treatment for many, many years. And that's sometimes the hardest part of recovery, is when all of a sudden your feelings are there and you have to deal with them, actually feel them, rather than numbing them or medicating them away with the substance that you were using. So good for you for being able to hang with that.
Yeah.
Were you able to really develop an appreciation for your feelings?
That took a long time. At first, my feelings scared the shit out of me. I mean, all of a sudden this feeling would come up. I'm like, whoa, what's that? And it took time for me and practice and working with my therapist. And I was reading books and going to retreats and learning more about who I was and dealing with the feelings. When they first came up, they scared me. But then as I slowly started to get to know what they were, I realized that they weren't something to be afraid of. They were something to be embraced and honored and respected. So when I got to that point, God, my life really turned around when I got in touch with the emotional part of who I am. And I think journaling was probably the one tool that helped more than anything else.
Yeah, say more about that. What do you teach people about journaling?
I do. And the reason is, when I first started journaling, I remember this so clearly. My therapist said, have you ever journaled? And my response to him was, journaling's for girls. And he laughed and he said, no, journaling's for people who want to get better. I'm like, oh, are you going to make me do this? He said, only if you want to feel better about who you are.
Right.
I said, fine. Okay, I'll journal. He said, I don't care what you write. I don't care how much you write, but I want you to write something in your journal every day for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, fine. I went home. I got an old notebook from school. I ripped out the pages that had stuff on them. And I had a page, and I'm staring at that blank page for a few minutes. I'm like, I don't know what to write. And I thought, oh, he told me it doesn't matter how much I write or what I write. My first journal entry, I don't know what to write. Done. Yeah. Day 2 was much easier. I still don't know what to write. Day 3, I still don't know what to write. And I'm really pissed off at Charlie for making me do this. Day 4, I'm still pissed off. And, today, blah, blah, and all of a sudden,
it started
I don't know if it was day 4, day 6, all this stuff started to bubble up and come out of me. And I was writing like a full pages of things just started coming out of me. It's like I uncorked the bottle and all of this came out. And I remember one time I started crying and I was like, what is that about? And I started to get in touch with what the different feelings were. And I truly believe that that's a big part of what made me into the person that I am today, is that I got in touch with that emotional part of self and realized that, talk about ascension from adversity, not having my feelings, to get in touch with my feelings that's where my strength comes from now. I thought that dealing with feelings was a
Right.
weakness, and I realize now it's one of my greatest strengths.
Well, and I don't know who said it. I can't tell you who said it, but there is a saying that goes something like, the thing that you fear the most is where your power lies.
Mm.
So tell us a little bit about how you've turned this into something that means something to other people.
Well, through a number of, you could call them coincidences, but I look at it as the universe was kind of nudging me towards a path.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the universe does that for all of us. It's like, hey, go over here. And some people say, oh, okay, I'll look at that. But other people are like, oh, no, that's too scary. I don't want to do that. And they're afraid of it. So they back away. But when I saw that, sharing at meetings made me feel better, writing in my journal made me feel better, going to meetings and helping others and being of service really helped me to feel better about who I was. I was probably maybe a year sober, a little less, a little more. I don't remember. That was a long time ago. A friend of my mom's was the vice principal of a high school and said, we're doing this Just Say No to Drugs program. We need a speaker. And she asked my mom, do you think Randy would be willing to come and share his story? And she was like, I don't know. I'll ask. Said, Randy, do you want to talk at Jan's high school to the students? They're doing a Just Say No program. And me, back then, a lot of ego and, hey, I'm sober. I've been sober almost a year. Look at me. Oh, I was such a cocky little kid. And I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'll talk to the students. Yeah, I share at meetings. I can do this. And I went to the high school and we sat in the front row. And I remember I was talking to Jan, I'm talking to my mom, and the other teachers are coming up and introducing themselves. I'm like, hi. And I said, oh, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And they said, well, let's start the program. People got up and did like introductory type things. And then they said, okay, it's your turn. And someone went up and introduced me. And I walked up on stage. I didn't know, because I didn't see anyone in the audience. I get up on stage. There are 1,000 high school students in the audience. And my first thought was, oh shit, what am I going to say?
Right.
And something was just talk, tell your story. And I could tell the kids did not want to be there. Here's a guy talking a drug story. They didn't want to be there. And I started talking and I don't remember what I said. But at the end, I said, okay, thank you for listening. And I got a standing ovation from 1,000 high school students.
Wow.
And it blew me away. And that rush that I got, that natural high that I received from that, it was like, okay, that felt really good. I think I want to do more of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I started speaking at high schools and colleges, and one thing led to another. And I spoke at University of San Diego, and the woman there 9 months later was at a conference, called me and said, hey, there's a university in Northern California and they're looking for someone to run their drug and alcohol program. Can I give them your name?
Wow.
And I was like, work at a university? I got fired from a job delivering pizza, right? Work at a university? What are you talking about? And I told my sponsor, I said, they want me to go work at a college. What do I do? He said, no, they just want to know if you're interested. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm interested. And then they called me and said, we want to set up a time to interview on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, they want me to work there. No, they want to interview you. So when I broke it down into the little pieces, I interviewed for a job and then they said, we'd like to fly you up here. Okay. Wow. And they flew me up there and I interviewed with students and staff and residents' life and everybody. And I came back and they called me and they said, we'd like to offer you the position.
Wow.
And I thought, I went from getting thrown out of college to now I'm going to go work at one.
Right.
And now, in my career, I've worked on 4 different college campuses. It really helped launch my speaking career. I love working with college students. Mm-hmm. And again, if you would have told me back on May 16th, 1984, Randy, you have no idea what kind of life you're going to have in the future. You're going to be so blown away. all I wanted to do was quit getting high. All I wanted to do was have a moment of peace in my life.
Right.
And I just kept doing the next indicated thing. And I would feel the fear and I would walk through it anyway. And every part of it was scary. Every part of it was difficult, but I kept trudging through it. And here I am with, in May, I just celebrated 40 years of sobriety without a relapse.
Congratulations. That is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm really proud of myself. And what I've learned along the way is that I'm not a bad person. One of the things I learned in the program is that, us addicts and alcoholics, we're not bad people trying to get good. We're sick people that need to get well.
Right.
And through my recovery, I learned the tools. And then all of a sudden I realized that teaching others really was like another high for me. And I kind of get off on helping other people on their journey and in their path. And I just offer them what was offered to me. And some take it and some don't. And that's up to them. But being able to be of service to others like this, I really feel like that's why I'm still around. Because I should have been dead 1,000 times, driving drunk, driving high. That I didn't hurt myself or anybody else is a miracle. But now I realize I was guided, and I'm really glad that I'm here.
I'm glad you're around too.
Oh, thank you.
There's a book, and I'm spacing on the author, but the name of the book is The Moral Molecule. And in The Moral Molecule, the guy who wrote it is an economist, actually. And he does a study.
Paul Zak.
Thank you. Paul Zak, yes. He does a study wherein he takes college students that have volunteered for the study, and they are able to do an exercise with somebody that they don't know that allows them to give that person a gift of a certain amount of money. Not for any particular reason, just allows them to do that. And he has a control group where they're not giving anything. And then he measured in their blood the levels of oxytocin after this, exercise of giving. And what he found was oxytocin levels rose by a statistically significant level in those who were able to give to someone that they didn't know. And oxytocin is the neurochemical in the body that is called the love hormone. It's released at the time of birth in the mother. And it's kind of what causes that rush of love that a mother feels for her baby. So it's interesting that it almost sounds like your addiction switched from dopamine that was released by the substances to oxytocin that you get from giving to other people.
I think you're absolutely right. Do they have, I hope they don't have an Oxytocin Anonymous, because I don't want to go.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And that makes sense. One of the things that I really love, admire, and respect about you is that you have, because of your background and all that you bring to this, you have a different way of looking at things, and sometimes scientifically, sometimes emotionally. I really love that. Like when we have conversations and that you bring these things up, is like, wow, I had no idea. And that's why I think you doing this show is like so spot on. And I think you're going to have a massive dose of oxytocin released, because I think you're going to help a lot of people with this show.
Well, that's the whole goal, right? That's the whole goal. So
that's
talk a little bit. I want to hear more about your journey as it went on and developed. How did you come about? You were appearing on all of these major networks, and you did a TED Talk, and you've written a book, and you have more of your journey that you're embarking on soon as well. So, tell us more about that.
Every part of it tended to build on the part from last, such as speaking at the high school led to speaking at the college, which led to the college job, which led to that job only lasted a year, and then I had to look for another university job. And it's interesting that I was looking for universities in California because that's where I lived. And I was kind of putting myself in this little box. And I couldn't find a job. And I had to move back with mom and dad. And I was humiliated and shamed and, putting it on myself. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, maybe I'm not supposed to be in California. Let me look at jobs around the country. And that's when I found James Madison University in Virginia. And I applied for the job there and I got it. And I moved across country, not knowing anybody, raised in Los Angeles and went to school in San Diego. And here I am moving to Harrisonburg, Virginia, which was a total trip. But I love the campus. I love the students. And I thought this is the next part of my journey. And it was there that I started going to conferences, and I would hear people present at the conferences and I would think, I can do that.
Right.
So I started applying to speak and do presentations at the conferences. And I went from just being a breakout speaker to being a keynote speaker. And other campuses were coming to me saying, hey, can you come speak on our campus? I was
Amazing.
like, really? Wow. So everything kind of built on the thing before.
Right.
And unexpected. It wasn't something where, I'm going to present at this conference and then people are going to ask me to speak on their campus. I never thought about that. But I just kind of let the path take me where it went. I kind of look at life as kind of like a river, and it has a current. And sometimes you're caught in the rapids and sometimes it's like a lazy river. But I have found that the more we fight the current and the more we want to get out of the river, that's when we become stagnant. And that's when we become tired. When we fight the current's going to take us where it's going to go.
Right.
But if we fight it, all we end up doing is going to the same place, but just being more tired. So
that sounds like something out of the book Illusions.
Oh, my favorite book of all time.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's probably where I got this analogy from, the creatures who cling to the bottom of the river.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that
Rather
story
than just letting
changed
go.
my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it must have built your confidence as well as you went along. You must have become increasingly more, comfortable with being in front of audiences and speaking and talking about your truth. This takes a lot of vulnerability because you're telling the deepest, darkest moments of your life and your greatest fears. You're sharing it with everyone, but in doing that, you're validating other people's deepest, darkest fears and most vulnerable moments. And you're telling them there's no shame. There's no shame in this.
Exactly. And that's a big part of it. But it's funny, you talk about the confidence piece. I didn't have the confidence and then did it. Right. It's like I did it and the confidence kind of followed.
Right.
It was like, wow, this was pretty cool. Wow, that went pretty well. So the confidence was something that came from doing the action. And I watch a lot of people who say, okay, I'm going to wait until I feel more comfortable and confident before I do it. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And I talk to people, I do programs for people sometimes, or I'll coach people when they say, I'm afraid of doing public speaking. I'll say, okay, I'm going to help you with that. I'm going to help you get over that fear. And the first thing I say to them is, what percentage of time do you think I'm feeling nervous and a little scared before I get up on stage? What percentage of the time? And they say, probably never. Or they'll say, I don't know, 10%, 40%. And I say, no, 100% of the time.
100%.
100% of the time. Every time I'm about to get on stage, I go, oh my God, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up. But I just get up and it's like the first couple minutes, I feel like a little bit of the jitters. And then all of a sudden something just takes over. And I'm like a participant of the presentation. The words just come out. I sometimes I'm like, wow, that was really good. You got to keep this in there. I'm having a conversation with myself while I'm speaking to 500 people.
Right.
But that's the muscles that I was building as I was becoming a professional speaker. Is those things just happened along the way.
Right. Do you ever feel like it's sort of coming through you from even another source.
Exactly. And I tap into that.
Mm-hmm.
And, my spiritual growth has evolved over the years as I've been doing all these practices.
Right.
Today, I call it like the energy of the universe. And I tap into that kind of like an outlet in the wall. If we plug in, we have all the energy that we need. I used to call it God just because that was an easier way to do it. And the thing I would say to myself and here's Randy Haveson. My first thought was, okay, God, let my words be your words.
Yes. Yes.
And then I would just get up and start talking.
I think I've told you, a dear friend of mine, whom I've known since I was itty bitty, professional guitarist named Leo Kotke, has said to me that it feels as if when he's writing his music, when he's sitting down with his guitar and just, that it's something that sort of just comes through him. Like he almost feels like it coming down through the top of his head and out his fingers. And he's been kind of superstitious about that, not wanting to mess that up, always wanting to be very respectful of it. And he's another person that, proudly will tell you that he's in recovery for many, many years now because the substances were taking his music from him. And I think that's really a metaphor for what was going on with you. Your music was always in you. You just were afraid to let it out because you were afraid of being shamed for it.
Exactly. Or making a fool of myself or, shamed. I mean, I was almost embarrassed by it. I'd been playing drums since I was 7 years old and I love playing drums and I would get a lot of attention for it. But when it came time to like be a musician, I got scared and I used the drugs and the alcohol as a way to kind of back away. But now the way I look at it, if I would have made it in the music business back when I was 19, 20 years old, I don't know if I would have, I'd be alive today.
Right.
So my path had to go a different way. And while being a drummer, I learned how to be on stage. So being a speaker, I can get up there. That musician part, that person who likes being on stage kind of takes over when I do that. And I love it. It's fun.
Oftentimes the vocations that we go into or the professions that we go into are sort of not just an extension of really who we are at our core, but they serve us in a way to help us heal. I know that's true for me as a psychiatrist, and I talked about that in my first episode.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's true for you? And if so, how has this been helpful for you?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it is so healing for me. And, I think about this a lot. And what it also does when I put myself out there, whether it's through my podcast or my speaking or my coaching or whatever it is that I'm doing, it holds me accountable. Because how do I teach someone else how to do this if I'm not willing to do it myself? And I learned really early on in my recovery that it's more important to walk the walk than it is to talk the talk. And I watched a lot of people who were at meetings who would talk about being so spiritual and all these things they were doing, but they were cheating on their wife and they were doing all this other stuff that it's like, how do you talk about this when you're doing that? So I think even the people who weren't walking the walk, they taught me how important it was to actually do that. So for me, one of my key core values is integrity. And to me, integrity is doing what you say you're going to do and walking that walk and not just talking the talk. So that to me is one of the most important pieces of it. And when I'm going to be out there being of service to others and helping others, and my business is about making a difference in the lives of others, I have to make a difference in my own life.
Right. You have to set the example.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Because otherwise, there's no integrity and I'm not going to live that way.
So what do you think has been the most important thing to you to not only get you through the tough time, but to bring this to the world? What core qualities would you tell our audience are important to overcome a difficult time like that?
Ooh, God, you ask good questions. And here's the first thing that came to mind. Hope. When I'm going through the really rough times and I think, screw this, why do I have to go through this? I've already been through so much. Why? And something clicks in and says, this is temporary. It's going to get better.
Right.
And hope kicks in. And, I think that's why, I love the Star Wars movies and the Avenger movies. Even when the hero is down and it looks like there's no way out, the thing that carries them through is hope. And that's the theme of Star Wars through the whole thing. It's the whole saga is about hope. And I think that's why I love those movies so much.
Right.
Because I resonate with that. So when I'm feeling like I don't see any way out of this, when Luke and Han Solo and Leia are in that garbage thing and it's shrinking and they're ready to get crushed.
Right.
At the last moment, they're saved.
Right.
Hope happens.
Hope.
So now it's been so long, it's been 40 years. So when I have my really down times, I just went through so many transition points in my life.
You really did.
And I'm still dealing with that. And I have, I think I've had more down days in the last 3 months than I've had in the last 5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And the thing that gets me through it is hope. And knowing that I'm going to get through this just like I've gotten through all the others. And if I can get through that first 90 days of my sobriety, my first year, I could do anything.
Right.
So that's where my strength and my hope comes from.
What was helpful for you? Let's kind of narrow this down, and maybe we'll talk to the folks in the audience that might be struggling with substance abuse or just, starting to think about getting help and wondering if they can do it. What are some things that you can tell them so that, like, some roadblocks that they might run into? What's the hardest part of it and what helps to get through it in terms of practical, concrete things that you can do?
Okay. Number one, yes, you can do this, is have that little grain of hope inside of you that yes, it can get better. For me, going to meetings really helped because I was around like-minded people. The only people I knew outside of the meetings were people that I drank and used with. And they taught me that I had to change my playmates, playgrounds, and playthings. And getting a new social group, getting a new community for me to hang with was really, really important. And to realize that it didn't get this way overnight, the healing is not going to happen overnight either.
Right.
And, the first couple weeks, the withdrawal sucks. And a lot of it is physical. So just realize that will pass. Drink a lot of water, eat a lot of protein, and that's going to help.
Yes.
But after that, it's all the mental, the emotional, and to find that support group and to realize that, yes, you can do this. And again, God, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And the main part, and this is something I teach in all of my programs, the main piece is to just stay out of your own way.
Yes. Yes. And how do people get in their own way?
By telling themselves I can't do this. Or,
it's too hard.
It's going to be too hard for me. If only you knew what I've been through, you wouldn't say that if you could do it, I can do it. Those blocks that we put up.
Yes.
I believe that life gives us hurdles, but it also gives us the tools we need to get over the hurdle. But a lot of times we turn those hurdles into walls
Mm-hmm.
And those walls are much more difficult to get over than hurdles.
That's right. Because as I believe it was Wayne Dyer said, although it probably came from someone before Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yes.
And so what you're talking about is see it for the hurdle that it is, not the wall that you're turning it into, and gather around you the support and the people that you need to learn from. Travel a road that is most traveled by those that you need to learn from, right? Don't say, I'm going to go my own way and I'm going to do it my own way. And nobody can teach me anything, because I guarantee you there's someone who can help you, who's been there, done that, and knows exactly what you're going to run into and can warn you, hey, there's a pothole over there. You better steer this way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where finding a therapist or a support group who can help you with avoiding the potholes and the alligators and the quicksand and all the things that could get in your way.
Right.
That's really, really important. And you made me think about one of the things that really made a difference to me. You talked about changing the way you think. I remember my first meeting was on a Friday night. And I went to the meeting and I thought, oh my God, I love these people. I love what they're saying. This is so me. And afterwards, like, hey, it's your first meeting. Do you want to go to coffee with us after? I'm like, yeah. And I went to coffee and we laughed and we had fun. And I was meeting these people and I got phone numbers. And I went home and I was living with an addict at the time who was dating one of my drug dealers. And they were gone. I came home. I went to sleep at probably midnight, which was unheard of. They probably came in at 2:00 in the morning. I woke up the next day feeling great. I went downstairs. I'm having a bowl of cereal. I'm watching cartoons. And they finally came down about 2:00 in the afternoon. And I looked at them and the pasty faces and the red eyes. And I looked at them and went, I never have to feel that way again.
Right.
What used to be, I was so in that environment that I didn't see it. When I stepped out of it and saw it for what it was, it's like, I don't want that.
Right.
So that really helped me out.
I want to hear a little bit more about the book, Becoming Your Own BFF, and your podcast, of course, by the same name. But tell me how that ties into recovery.
Oh, big time. One of the things that I used to do all the time is I would treat myself more like my own worst bully. I would, every little mistake, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Oh, you're such a loser. Oh my God. Of course she told you she didn't want to go out with you. Who'd want to go out with you? But I realized there was this other part of me that wanted to treat me kinder and with more grace. And it's like, you know what? But maybe she's not the right one for you. Just go ask someone else out. That's okay.
Right.
And I started to realize that when I talked to myself more like a best friend rather than a bully, I was calmer, more relaxed, happier.
Right.
And I realized that I had the choice of which voice I wanted. Both of them are always talking, but it seemed like the bully voice is the one that had the megaphone. But I just turned that around.
Right. That's really the truth. And it's really human nature. It's actually a survival mechanism. It's sort of hardwired into us to pay more attention to the negativity in our environment, because that's where the threat can come from. And so we're built to self-protect. And as a result of that, we can talk ourselves into being afraid of something or into thinking something that isn't true, because it might be safer to do that.
Exactly.
Right.
And it might seem that way, but it's not.
Right.
And my book, it kind of gives people the tools they need and teaches them how to use the tools to turn around that negativity and from the bully to the best friend voice, and how to build self-esteem and how to feel better about who you are and where you fit in the world. That's the whole thing. And I talk about all the tools that I used. as a university administrator, as a recovering person, and just in my daily life. So, I put it all together in the book, and that's what I put out there, and I'm very proud of it.
Well, you should be. It's a great book. I've read
Thank
it.
you.
Yes. Well, Randy, I want to thank you so much for being here today. It's really been a pleasure. And I hope that folks in the audience will pick up a copy of your book. It's available on Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best with this show. I hope you get to help millions of people with this.
I hope so too. I hope so too. Mm-hmm. So thanks. And everyone, look for the next episode in about a week, and we'll see you then.